If you'll just tell us a little bit about what you did on the USS Suwannee.
I was a ship's baker. I served 3 years and 6 days on the Suwannee, from the day it was commissioned until I left the Suwannee in Wakayama, Japan. The only place I ever got ashore in was Nagasaki, and there wasn't much there.
Not many trips seashore to seashore kind of stories, huh?
Yeah.
How old were you when you joined the crew?
19.
19?
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about the October 24th, 25th, and 26th, 1944. Can you tell me a little bit about that day, those days?
Well, my battle station was the hangar deck, and the ship behind us we were supposed to be a bomb handling crew, but we didn't handle any bombs because it was just a place to send the cooks and bakers when they had general quarters. So we were on the hangar deck, and then the ship behind us, the Santee, got hit first, and within a short time after that, there's a dispute of how many minutes or how long it was. But I walked off, the Santee got hit, and I walked off and I watched the Santee burn for a while, and I walked off of the hangar deck with 3 other of my shipmates, and we walked down to behind the torpedo shack, which is probably 15 yards or so from where the kamikaze came through. We made the turn down the hallway, and just as we got around the hallway, it came through. And people's reaction is all completely, everybody's reaction is different. And one runs one way, one runs another way. The fellow on each side of me got hit with shrapnel, one in the arm and one in the neck. And the fellow across from me, him and I didn't scratch. And I run up on the flight deck, and I standing in the catwalk on the side of one of our pilots, and I looked and I saw the smoke coming up out of the hangar deck through the hole that it went through. And all I could say was, those poor guys on that hangar deck, because there were 19 guys laying under there dead, under that first deck. There was more of them got it when it went through to the next deck, and there were several of them got it on the quarter deck. And that's my little part of the.
And y'all were hit twice, is that right?
Yep. The second we got hit, I was in the shop when they hollered down general quarters, and I run to the back we went back to the back of the ship, which you call the poop deck. That's Navy talk. And then I could see the fellas jumping. The fellas were jumping off the front of the ship, and I watched them floating by. And they were picked up by destroyers, and some were transferred back to the ship eventually, and the rest of them went off to hospital ships and stuff.
I understand from some of the other interviews we've done that that was really a test of the discipline and how well everybody pulled together. And you may not have been doing a job you were trained to do, but everybody kind of did things like that. Did you do a job you?
My son wrote a story one time. I think I've got a copy. I'll give it to you. He asked me to tell you some things just like you did. I said, we went to our battle stations, we did our job, we got hit, we went back to put out the fires, and we went back, buried our dead, and went back to work.
What were your duties during the recovery period before the ship headed home, as far as after the fires were out?
I was the baker.
You were the baker?
Yeah. And we had four bakers left. Two bakers got killed, 2 got wounded, and 2 survived without not being casualties. We had, I don't know exactly exact number of cooks, but we only had 2 cooks left out of all the cooks. And they transferred some help from the other ships to help us, and a lot of our own shipmates came into the bake shop and galley, and a good share of them stayed after they started working the galley, and they stayed there. And that's what I did after it was over.
I understand y'all were dead in the water for quite a period of time?
I can't recall. There was so much going on at that time, and that was no part of my job.
Okay. No problem. Do you remember when you did finally get back home? You were just telling me they dropped you off and.
Hey, we went back and we had the first group they took them a while. We went back to Burlington, Washington for repairs. And the first half of the crew went home on the first half, and I went home on the second half, and that was one of the nicest trips on my way home. I got married.
You did? Did you know your wife before?
Yes, I did.
Before you went on
She
to
was my
Suwannee?
sweetheart all during the war.
Really?
Yeah.
Did she send you a lot of letters?
Every day.
Really?
You know, sometimes they pile up, maybe 2 weeks at a time, but until we got our mail delivered. But, I wrote her and she wrote me.
Did you save the letters?
I would have, but she wouldn't.
Oh.
Wait till she sees that. I wanted to save them, but she's no way.
Those are just between you and her.
Yeah.
The reunions seem to play a big part in remembering a lot of the stories and also kind of dealing with a lot of the kind of the bad stuff that happened. What's it been like for you to be able to meet with the men that you served with?
It's the greatest thing in my life. It gets closer. We get closer all the time, and we can get tears in our eyes at any moment. And it's just great.
What's it been like for y'all to experience this with him?
Well, the best example I can think of was today when we went to the Nimitz Museum down in Fredericksburg. You know, I've been to hundreds of different museums. I've never experienced it like seeing something on the South Pacific in World War II, going it through with somebody who's lived it, and seeing the different guns. And he says, well, yeah, we had one just like this, only ours was a single and this is a double. And just about every time we turned a corner, he had another story to tell. And some of these stories I've heard for the last 20 years, but seeing these things right there. And Orlando was our best experience. That was when all six of John's sons, we were all there in Orlando as like a big reunion. And just to sit in that, and that was one of the first reunions I'd been to, but to sit in the room with all that military history and listen to these people trade their stories, and it's just been phenomenal.
Make you real proud of the profession you chose?
I'll never miss another reunion as long as he's around.
And what about for you, Jerome?
To stand there today and watch, it was Dad and one of the other sailors. They were looking for New Caledonia on the map. There's a huge mural of the South Pacific on the wall at the Nimitz Museum. They were looking for New Caledonia on the map, and they were both looking for it with their canes. Now, these are guys who were 20 years old when they were there for real, and they were reliving the whole experience, only they're 55 years older today, and the canes could talk. It was an incredible impact just to kind of stand there and watch him relive. You can tell them they go back to being 20 years old, and you watch it in their eyes, and they become small, and they become 20 years old again, and it's almost overwhelming, and it gives us, especially the ones of us who are veterans, we get to watch this and feel it on an incredible level, and it brings us a lot closer to Dad, because I live 1,000 miles away, so I don't get to see him every day like Bill does, but when we do get together, it's really it's a heck of an experience.
I live almost 100 feet away.
Almost living at home.
He lives at 1401, and I live at 1400.
I'm across the street.
That's pretty nice. That was pretty moving. This is my first reunion from being with my grandfather, and it does bring you closer. He lives in Lubbock and I live in McAllen. It's 14 hours away from each other,
Mhm.
and we rarely see each other. Maybe once every couple of years.
Wow.
And so this has also been a moving experience for me as well.
The impact is that 10 years from now, there will be nobody pointing their cane at New Caledonia and saying, I was there.
Mm-hmm.
There will be nobody left.
The youngest member of this crew is 75, and attrition is going to take its toll along with age.
Mhm.
So we don't know how many times we're going to be able to do this again.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing this.
And that's why we wouldn't miss it
I'm so
ever
glad
again.
y'all are here.
Change dates.
Change dates? Okay. We'll keep talking. It seems.
See, and some of
Right.
it, some of it is stuff they've put in there.
They added a little bit.
Gets
Well, that
embellished.
happened last night.
Over 50 years
Yeah,
or
they-
so, you plant things in.
Mhm.
It fits the way you're thinking. It's how we work as human beings.
Mhm. My
He's
grandfather-
a nurse in the prisons.
My grandfather didn't remember burying a lot of the men. He didn't remember that part.
Everybody helped with some, not everybody, but a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
the chaplain didn't, and a few guys didn't do it all. The ship's crew we all chipped in and
Mhm.
helped the chaplain.
He didn't remember until 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
He came to one of the reunions and
Oh, okay.
and then we're talking about it, and it kind of all came back.
Sure.
And
Sure.
he was saying, he's really glad he didn't remember a lot of the stuff, but so I think these are helpful in that way. Everybody's kind of getting their stories straight and getting the other versions, but
Every reunion you come to, you learn a little something new that you forgot, and the shipmates all get closer.
Mhm. Tell me about some of the men that were mentioned tonight, if you can. Some of the names that were called out.
Well, there was Leon Hartman, who was my first-class baker, first-class petty officer, who was very fortunate, very kind to let me come into his bake shop. I worked in the 1st Division for first year and a half, and that's all chipping, painting, keeping the ship clean and loading stores. And I got a chance to get in the bake shop, and I was the happiest man on the ship. And Clarence Fedora was on one of the crews, and Joe Fellaini was one of the injured. I got to bring him in because Joe and Fedora were both coming up the steps from the galley, from the bake shop, and Joe was first, and he stepped out onto the galley, or out onto the quarterdeck, and we got hit just like that, and it blew him away. And he ended up in the ocean, wondering. He asked me last time I saw him, how did I get in the water all by myself? Well, on our first hit, it was inside the ship. Everything blew up, and there was very few open areas where people could get blowed out. And he just happened to step out where he was, and he ended up in the hospital in New Guinea. And he was there for a while for rehabilitation until they could move him some more because he was very badly burned. And then they transferred him to a hospital ship, and the hospital ship got torpedoed or got hit. And after that, he went back to the States, and he was in rehabilitation for a year, and then they sent him back to sea again because he was regular Navy, and he stayed in. But after he went back to sea the second time, he had a nervous breakdown, and that ended his Navy career. And then it's Fedora that was coming up the steps behind him. I don't think anybody knows where he's at. He just stepped out on there, and the bomb just blew him apart. And then another one, after I left the hangar deck after we got hit, I was walking down the hallway, and there were about 6 men standing up against the wall. They were all burnt black. I didn't recognize any of them. And I walked by, and this voice came up from one of those guys, and they said, "John, don't you know me?" And I said, "Yes, George." I recognized his voice. I took him down the wardrobe and laid him down, and his lungs were burned out. And I brought water up to him off and on, because all they wanted was water. But he passed away before morning, and that was the saddest thing.
What would you like for people to remember about your service during World War II?
That's hard. I can't.
What would y'all like for people to know about your dad, what
Well,
he did?
I think we took care of that in Orlando. through the efforts of my brother and I and Senator Herb Cole of Wisconsin, we arranged to have a certificate of commendation presented to Dad on behalf of, the country and his 6 sons. My brother Jerry basically wrote it. We fine-tuned it. Senator Cole had it signed by the Secretary of the Navy, Mr. Dalton, and at the Orlando reunion with his 6 sons around, he was presented with this commendation, basically, for continuing service to the United States through his children, since he got out of the Navy.
It's wonderful.
The message, I think, from what Dad did was, for God's sake, don't let it happen again. We can't have a war like that again.
No, it won't be one.
Some of the men have talked about how there were very hard times, but there were a lot of good times, and that how much y'all feel like a family going through so many things together. Tell me about some of the good times, if you can.
I don't know. With that gang of guys, there was always a good. There was always a good
If
time.
there's a clean story, because families are gonna families are gonna see this.
No, that was anytime we went out on Liberty, we all had a good time.
Mhm.
We'd go to a honky tonk and throw $10 a piece on the table, and there was $60 there. We drank up $60 worth of beer. Nobody bought each other a drink. We just threw the money out in the middle and we drank it until it was gone.
No, tell her about the torpedo juice.
No. We had 50 gallons of evaporated torpedo juice every time we had port.
None of those today, though?
No.
Is there anything else y'all would like to contribute?
Well, there was one little anecdote that I like to remind him of. One of the times he got hit, he and 2 of his friends were up where they weren't supposed to be, having a cigarette break, having some lucky strikes or whatever. And it turned out, had they been in the bake shop, the explosion or whatever would have killed them.
We've been on the hangar deck.
So my line to him is, we owe our lives to Lucky Strikes. If it wasn't for cigarettes, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now.
So take up smoking.
And bring your friends.
That's right. Well, thank you so very much for sitting with me.
Thank
I
you
really
for having
appreciate
us.
it. And Mr. Rogers said something about the flag. Jim's gonna make fun of me because I started to cry. And but from on November 11th, there'll be a flag outside my house.
Oh, good.
So
Excellent.
thanks to y'all. Thank you so much. And I have these tissues not for you, but for me.
I want to show you.